two guys that can do it all. Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
When you look at Marcus Johnson, when you look at Nikola Jokic, these aren't guys that are big, super athletic, dunking and jumping over people. These are just guys that are clean, skilled footwork, and do things below the rim that make the everyday guy look like it'd be like, I can do that. But you can't, and neither can I.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Hello and welcome to a Tuesday live right here on the Early Line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination to consume everything all across the grid. He is Joe Ranieri. I am Ben Stevens. We are here together for the next 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern Time. A Tuesday morning to look back on a Monday Night Football finale to week number 13 around the National Football League. In Mile High, the Broncos and the Browns in a high-scoring and wild game. A ton of air yardage at altitude last night and a ton of touchdown tosses, just some to the opposing team. We'll break down everything we saw from a Monday night, what it means for both Cleveland, and namely Denver moving forward, the Broncos' postseason outlook at the end of 13 weeks, and entering the bye in Mile High. Elsewhere around the NFL, we heard from the Bears yesterday after the dismissal of Matt Eberflus. A ton to break down, Joe Ranieri, on this Tuesday morning. College football action, college basketball, and a huge week ahead with some conference tilts starting tonight and, of course, around the association as well.
It is. I can't think of any better way to kick off the month of December than the week we have coming up here, Ben. It is going to be over the top in every sport known to us.
Absolutely so. Let's start in the National Football League by looking back on the Monday night finale to Week 13. The Broncos and the Browns in Denver at altitude, and things got a little bit wild last night. 41-32, the final score in favor of the Broncos, who were booked as a 6.5-point home favorite. The best favored team in the NFL continues to cover somehow, some way. The Jameis Winston experience in the full ilk of that term last night, Joe Ranieri, throwing for nearly 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, but 3 INTs. The first 2 were taken back the other way, including late in the football game, under 2 minutes remaining, as the Browns were trying to drive down the field down by 2 to maybe kick a game-winning field goal or score a go-ahead touchdown. Instead, it was picked off and taken the other way. The Broncos get their 8th win of the year. They are 8-5. They are also 6-0 against the spread, Joe, when booked as the favorites this season.
Yeah, I mean, what a night for Jameis, right? I mean, almost 500 yards. I counted a total of 6 interceptions, 4 for the Browns, 2 for the Broncos. And, of course, that last interception with under a minute left, he threw in the end zone as well. So, yeah. I mean, you got the entire career of Jameis Winston in one night all summed up there, Ben, with that performance last night. The guy I felt terrible for was Jerry Jeudy. He was the guy I felt the worst for.
He had a huge game, though, in his return to the Mile High City. 13 targets, 9 grabs, and 235 yards. Jeudy did not mince any words of his excitement and anticipation entering this matchup against his former club in Denver, and he showed out, as did Jameis, whose passing yards prop was 230 and a hook. He doubled that and then some. Bo Nix, not bad on the other side, but multiple interceptions as well. We had 5 INTs thrown by the pair of quarterbacks to 5 passing touchdowns between the two as well. Again, what it means for the Broncos, a victory in the last bye week of the year around the National Football League. Is Denver a true playoff team? Here entering week 14, only 5 weeks remaining, it would seem to be the case. Other news around the NFL, Joe. It's been the story of the season for San Francisco. Injuries have marred this entire campaign that started with the 49ers as a very short favorite to win the NFC Championship once again. Instead, injuries have been the issue. Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason both placed on injured reserve. Joe, their season's likely done.
Yeah, and it just goes to show you about how hard it is to maintain that kind of level of success year after year, because you can have the greatest roster in the world. If you have cluster injuries, things can go hard left in a hurry. And unfortunately for the 49ers, had they stayed healthy the whole year, we'd probably be having a different discussion. But they're basically a 500 football team, and they don't have any of their stars available to them, and that's unfortunate for them.
Currently 2 games below 500 at 5-7. There is still some life in the NFC West and a sliver of optimism for San Fran, who has been as equally banged up defensively as on the offensive side of the football. Talanoa Hufanga, one of their great DBs, back, or at least his practice window has opened for the 49ers. More rough news from the injury perspective for the Saints. Mr. Do-It-All, Mr. Blue Eyes, Taysom Hill, out for the season with a torn ACL that he suffered on Sunday in the loss to Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, but, and you know, ironically enough, it's crazy, but that division is all of a sudden everyone's coming back to one another as well, and that's not great news there for New Orleans. But hopefully he'll be back and good as new a year from now, because I do think changes are coming to that organization.
Yeah, the Saints 2-1 under the interim head man, Darren Rizzi, but we would expect a change at some point this offseason. Now to the NBA, just 4 games last night on a Monday evening, and the Lakers continue to struggle, and LeBron James is in a huge slump. He will turn 40 at the end of this month in year number 22. Joe, his worst shooting stretch since his rookie season, now over 2 decades ago. 6 consecutive games with a field goal percentage less than 45%. He has missed his last 19 threes in a row as the T-Wolves win big in the Twin Cities last night, bouncing back against L.A. 109-80. Felt like a Timberwolves line. It was. They easily cover as a 7.5-point home favorite.
Yeah, I mean, listen, what is that? 5th loss now in 7 games. And you mentioned it. The dude is 40 years old. Do you have any idea the tread left on those tires? The answer is not much, LeBron. I would be shocked if we're being honest here, Ben. I'd be shocked if LeBron doesn't start taking games during the week off, if you know what I mean here. Although I know you can't say that in the NBA, but I'd be shocked if they're not trying to at least steady the ship and try and get him to January here in one piece.
It was a stated goal for LeBron to play all 82 games this season. He was asked about it last night and said, we'll see how I'm feeling. Not going to talk about it right now. I don't think that goal is going to be hit. The Celtics on Sunday night in Cleveland lost for the first time this year as an underdog in a matchup of 1 versus 2 in the Eastern Conference. It used to be 1 versus 2, at least, these two teams meeting in the Eastern Conference Finals, the Celtics and the Heat. But without Jimmy Butler last night, Miami gets beat bad in Boston, 108-89. The Celtics cover as a 10-point home favorite.
Yeah, it's just terrible. I mean, the Heat could have built a house with the amount of bricks they were chucking up last night. It was terrible. They couldn't hit from the floor. They couldn't hit any threes. It was over before it even started, really, in that game. But unfortunate for a 500 Heat team, and that's pretty much all they are.
The new AP Top 25 in men's college hoops post-feast week. Kansas remains number 1 despite a test from Auburn in the poll. Somehow, some way, UConn, who lost all 3 games in Maui, hangs on at number 25. What are you watching out there, AP pollsters?
Yeah, that's all right. I am sure that's exactly what Coach Hurley wants. He will use that and squeeze every bit of motivation out of that ranking. I promise you, UConn is not done yet at 5-3. It's a lot of basketball still to be played.
A lot of basketball still left. USC quarterback, now former USC QB, Miller Moss, enters the transfer portal following the end of the regular season. He will be highly coveted in the quarterback market this college football offseason. Back to Monday night at Mile High next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you. Pinching your own cheek? As I was looking down and did not know we were getting...
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the Early Line, live right here on this Tuesday morning to recap the end of week number 13 around the National Football League. Only 5 weeks remain after Monday night in Mile High. The Broncos and the Browns at altitude. 2 teams, Joe, on very different trajectories this season, entering week 13. Of course, it has been a disappointing campaign for the Browns, but now with Jameis Winston making his 5th start, at least it can be fun. It certainly was on a Monday, but the Broncos continuing to try to stack up wins to bolster their playoff resume. pretty much what happened last night. A lot of fun. The Jameis Winston experience to a T. And yet a Broncos victory in a high-scoring affair at altitude. 41-32. The Broncos cover, courtesy of a late pick six. Jaquan McMillan, under 2 minutes remaining in regulation, picks off Jameis Winston and takes it back to the crib for the second INT return touchdown for Denver's defense last night. They pick off Jameis again in the end zone about a minute later to hold on for the 9-point win and a cover. Total of 41 and a hook, Joe. Sky's way over as the two teams combined for 73 points last night.
Yeah, and it's funny, Ben, because, Winston will get a lot of the headlines and being Jameis, which is, that's what he was in Tampa there at the end, too. Remember, when you got good Jameis, it was great. But the problem is with good Jameis, you were going to get, he's not sure which team he's playing for because he's just as good to the other team in games. And that is why he lost being a starting quarterback in the NFL, because you couldn't trust him. Having said that, the guy that impressed me the most last night was Bo Nix, who threw for what? Half the yardage that Jameis threw for. I mean, he still almost threw for 300 yards. But his ability to get out of the pocket, recognize, throw on the run, make things happen, that makes him very dangerous. And boy, oh boy, the game looks like it's slowing down to him, too. Much different quarterback than we saw in the first month of the season. I think Denver is primed for a playoff run here. Very dangerous team here because of Bo Nix's ability to be able to avoid all sorts of, rushing and not exactly wilting under pressure, Ben. I mean, the kid has been nothing short of impressive. Everyone wants to talk Jaden Daniels. To me, sure, this is the steal of the draft.
Well, look at that season outlook for Denver. The odds outlook as it pertains to Offensive Rookie of the Year as well. The overall stat line for Bo Nix, not overly impressive, but still nearly 300 yards. Well over his passing yards prop last night of 220 and a hook. Multiple interceptions. Two great plays by Cleveland's corner Denzel Ward on the first one in the opening half to dive for a football to knock it up into the air that was then intercepted, and on a deep shot to Marvin Mims where Bo dropped in a perfect ball earlier in the second half to Marvin Mims. Denzel Ward made a sensational play. The two quarterbacks, as you see there in the stat log, 5 interceptions between the pair, but also 5 touchdown tosses, and that is a Jameis night. Nearly 500 yards, 497, well over his passing yards prop of 230 and a hook, 4 touchdowns and 3 picks. It just so happens, Joe, that 2 of the picks were taken back by the Broncos to the house. Nick Bonito, who's having a great year in year number 3 for Denver's defense, and then late at the end to get that cover by Jaquan McMillan. And we'll get to Jameis in just a moment. But speaking of the cover, Joe, the Broncos are the best favorite team in the NFL. They were a 6.5-point home favorite last night. They cover. Denver is now a perfect 6-0 against the number, booked as a favorite this year, covering by an average margin of 2 touchdowns per game. Total goes well over 41.5. We saw nearly 1,000 combined total yards between these two teams last night. Denver has one of the elite defenses, not on display last night, rather gashed through the aerial attack from Cleveland. They did miss their secondary corner opposite Patrick Surtain in Riley Moss. But, Joe, in the 6 games that the Broncos have been booked as a favorite, 5 of the 6 have gone over. The only under a few weeks ago at home against Atlanta, where Denver scored 38 points. And, oh, by the way, the fun of Jameis Winston, the 5 starts he has made for the Browns, 4 overs for Cleveland.
Yeah, and would have been fun to have seen if Jameis had actually started the year for Cleveland, what it would have been like for sure. But, when you dig into the stat numbers again last night, I think one of the other big things, 2 things actually, that stand out to me is the Broncos, outrushed the Browns, and that's not good, Browns. You need to be rushing. You need to be outrushing the teams you're playing. And also, Jameis Winston had 3 sacks for 22 net yards lost. You know how many times that vaunted Cleveland defense sacked Bo Nix? 0. That's my point. They could not get to Bo Nix. He was able to evade and make plays while running out of the pocket. Not something Jameis Winston was able to do. If you'd have told me I got a quarterback throwing for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns and they lost, I'd have laughed at you. But that's exactly what you got last night with the Browns.
Cleveland is 3-9 straight up. If Jameis was playing all year, how different might it have been? But again, the Jameis Winston experience in full essence last night. And not just in his play, but in his post-game talk as well.
In times like this, it's an opportunity to continue to glorify the Lord, even through the toughest circumstances. I know I'm better than this. I know I'm just praying for the Lord to deliver me from pick sixes. That's not me. Like, a phenomenal game, offense, do some great things, but I messed it up.
I mean, that is an all-time quote. Praying for the Lord to deliver me from pick sixes. In a past life or maybe a future life, Jameis Winston is going to be a preacher, and you would follow that man into battle. That line right there, praying for the Lord to deliver me from pick sixes. He had 2 last night, resulting in 14 points for Denver. When you lose a game by 9, that's kind of how it shakes out. The season outlook for both clubs, but maybe the Broncos playoff push next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The updated outlooks following the end of Monday Night Football and the conclusion of week number 13 around the National Football League. We'll talk Denver because their season lays ahead of them entering the bye here in week 14. By the way, the final full bye weekend around the National Football League is this weekend. 6 teams on the bye, and then after that, the final month of action uninterrupted, at least to my knowledge. Joe, when you look at the Cleveland Browns, again, Jameis Winston, we know what he is as a National Football League quarterback. There are some very, very high highs, like at altitude, and there are some very low lows, as we saw last night as well. If he had been the quarterback, though, and you can even go back to last year with Joe Flacco taking the reins in Cleveland, in this Kevin Stefanski system, you wonder if this talented Browns roster could have made a playoff push, as was expected with Deshaun Watson. And you wonder, on top of that, Joe, as this season is lost, the Browns are 3-9. They've only covered once in any of those 9 L's this year. What the quarterback situation is going to be moving forward once Deshaun Watson returns from that torn Achilles. All of the guaranteed money, all of the investment into one of the worst contracts, trades, deals, and people the NFL has ever seen. But, Joe, you wonder for Cleveland as a team to sustain success moving forward, what the answer is at the quarterback position next season and beyond, knowing that guys like Jameis and Joe Flacco have elevated this Browns team to a ceiling offensively we just simply haven't seen with Deshaun Watson under center.
Yeah, no, listen, I think the Deshaun Watson gamble was a loss. And I think, I think the ownership there, one of the worst ownership groups in all of professional sports, by the way, but Haslam and company there, even they know, Ben, that they gambled, they took a shot, and they lost. He's a shell of what he was. And quite honestly, it didn't make any sense given the fact that Stefanski's offense does not jive with the kind of quarterback that Deshaun Watson is. They never really were on the same page, and Stefanski's offense doesn't play to the strengths of Deshaun Watson. So it was a head-scratching move to begin with, but I guarantee you it's one that Stefanski didn't want and was given to. So not only do you have to wonder, all right, where do the Browns go from here? Who's the coach next year of the Browns? Did Stefanski fall on his sword enough for Haslam and company here in order to be able to keep this job? I don't know. It feels like the Browns are going nowhere fast, but they've got to reset somewhere along the line. But I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, I still think Kevin Stefanski remains the head coach, multiple coach of the year winner as he was a season ago. I just think that Cleveland's going to have to make the difficult decision, and Jimmy Haslam is going to have to lay in the bed that he made and just pay Deshaun Watson, despite the fact that he probably doesn't play again for the Browns, nor should he. But that's Cleveland's future. Let's talk about the Broncos' present. Joe, an 8-5 football team with a rookie quarterback in year number 2 of the Sean Payton era at Mile High. This Denver team, tied right now technically, record-wise with Baltimore for the final 2 AFC wildcard spots. The Ravens do have that direct head-to-head tie-breaking advantage. But Denver is well clear of everybody else in the AFC wildcard race for that third and final spot. Denver now greater than a $2 favorite to be a playoff team at 8-5 entering their bye. Joe, unless something drastically changes down the stretch, I think Denver's into the postseason with a rookie QB in Bo Nix.
Well, timing is everything, right, Brent? So here they go. They're now an 8-win football team. And they've got a bye this week. So now they can get healthier. They can retool. Then they got the Colts coming up in week 15. And I think we can all safe to say that the Broncos should have no problem beating the Colts because that's where we're at with this Broncos team now. I'm seeing a rookie quarterback who had some struggles early on. But you know what? Game's starting to slow down for him, starting to look the part. He's got multiple 100-yard receivers last night. He's not getting sacked. Everything about this team screams wild card. They'll be in the playoffs. Are they going to beat anybody in the upper echelon? Probably not. But they're not going to roll over either, which makes them a very dangerous team.
And we'll look at that AFC playoff picture in just a moment. But quickly on Bo Nix. Here are the numbers. He's got the second best price to win offensive rookie of the year behind Jaden Daniels. Plus 240 for Nix, minus 270 for Daniels. I'm not sure the gap should be that wide. We'll hit on that conversation and that AFC postseason picture after week 13 up next.
sharpest football contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations. The way you coach this football team, I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek. As I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the Early Line on this Tuesday morning, looking back on the end of Week 13 and where the playoff picture around the National Football League stands, entering the final 5 weeks of this NFL regular season. Hey, it's December. It's time for those In the Hunt graphics. We'll get to it in just a moment. But, Joe, back to Bo Nix very quickly here, because you mentioned it. He is rivaling Jaden Daniels for the best rookie quarterback this season, and thus the Offensive Rookie of the Year award winner. We thought it would be a race of two QBs. Probably the top two picks, Caleb Williams for Chicago, Jaden Daniels in Washington. Now I think it's a two-quarterback race, but instead of Caleb, it's Bo. And you see those odds there. They did not move after where the results were last night. Entering the game, plus 240 for Bo Nix. After the game, plus 240. Maybe not his best statistical night, his first multi-interception game since the very second game of his NFL career, but it wasn't like drastically awful decisions or rookie mistakes for those two interceptions, and still threw for nearly 300 yards and had a dime of a touchdown pass to a streaking Marvin Mims down the middle of the field early on in the third quarter. And as you start to make your comparisons between the two, Jaden Daniels had 4 total touchdowns in the blowout win over Tennessee on Sunday. Jaden Daniels got off to the very historic start in the opening month of his rookie campaign. But for the most part, he's cooled off, at least for those statistical anomalies, and Bo Nix has been right there. Washington is 8-5. Denver is 8-5. Both teams with rookie quarterbacks more than likely going to play in the postseason. The arguments, Joe, at times are very similar between Daniels and Nix.
Yeah, they are, except one was the number 2 pick in the draft. The other one was the number 16 pick in the draft. So, the expectations for Daniels was much greater than it was for Bo Nix. Everyone thought Bo Nix was going to be a bust, and they were going, remember, Ben, when they traded, what is Sean Payton doing? Oh, my God, they went from Russell Wilson, now this guy, but this guy can't play quarterback. I thought Aikman said something real interesting on the broadcast last night. He was talking about Bill Parcells, and Parcells' rule of thumb whenever it came to drafting quarterbacks is he wanted the quarterback that had the most college football experience. he would have never drafted Richardson, ever in a million years, and Indy is figuring out why. But who played more college football than Bo Nix? And I think what we're seeing is it makes sense. It correlates, man. A guy with that much football experience, I don't know why we're surprised at what we're getting from him. I'm just shocked at the geniuses and the scouts in the NFL that nobody saw this guy having any more value than what Sean Payton did, who couldn't believe he was still available that late in the draft.
The sixth and final quarterback to go in the opening round, but all six in the top 12, behind both Michael Penix Jr. and J.J. McCarthy. Penix has not played really yet this year, at least has not started. Of course, McCarthy's rookie season done before it even started, injuring his knee before this season got underway. Might we see Michael Penix Jr. rather quickly? Joe, you asked, who has played more college football than Bo Nix? Up until Saturday, the answer was nobody ever in the history of FBS college football. But then it was the guy that was his successor at Oregon, Dylan Gabriel, making his 62nd career start on Saturday night against Washington. I am just, at this moment, 9 yards away from cashing maybe the best bet I have ever made, and that was Bo Nix over 28.50.5 for his season-long passing yards prop. Just looking at the numbers of Russell Wilson last year in Sean Payton's system, and even with some of those rookie lumps that Bo Nix took early on, if he could be mediocre, he was going to surpass this number. Again, he is 9 yards away from doing so, and the Broncos still have 4 more games to play this season. In fact, just for the numbers, again, Jaden Daniels more than likely will win Offensive Rookie of the Year, and I don't have issue with it. I'm not like pounding my fist. How dare they? But Bo Nix has more passing yards by just about 35. He has a slightly worse completion percentage than Daniels, who got off to a historic start this season. But Bo Nix, more passing touchdowns, 17-15. More total touchdowns. He's got 22 with 5 rushing scores. Daniels has 6 rushing TDs and only 21 total. And again, they both, when you look at the interceptions numbers, have been rather clean for rookies. Nix has 2 more than that of Daniels at this moment. So, again, it's going to be a good competition over the final month of this regular season to see who wins the hardware. And both teams have been elevated by the rookie quarterback to be a playoff contender. Here's that AFC playoff picture at the moment, Joe Ranieri. The Kansas City Chiefs, so the number 1 seed. They have that game advantage record-wise in front of Buffalo. But, of course, the Bills have the direct head-to-head tiebreak, and it looks like the Chiefs are leaking oil each and every week, where the Bills only seem to get stronger in the month of December. The Steelers, a legitimate 9-3 football team, and the Texans are going to win the AFC South, Joe, but because everybody else in the division not playing the greatest brand of football at the moment.
Yeah, no, not a whole lot of mediocrity there, Ben, is it not? But I'll say this, I mean, clearly as the 7 seed with the Broncos, you know, that Colts game coming up in week 15 out of the bye, I think that's pretty much all she wrote for the Colts at that particular point. Broncos win that game, then there's really no avenue, I think, for the Colts to sneak in. And is there a whole lot besides the perception difference between the Ravens, Chargers, and the Broncos? I mean, the Broncos lost to the Chargers first go around. It was a 1-score game, and they probably should have won that game. And the Ravens, that defense is trash, man. I mean, this is, to me, there's not a whole lot separating the 5th, 6th, and 7th seed is currently on that graphic right there. I think the Broncos are every bit as good as those other 2 teams.
The only difference is Baltimore has the direct head-to-head tie-breaking advantage over both, beating the Chargers in the Harbaugh last Monday night, the early win against the Broncos. Those 2 teams will play again in just a few weeks. Short week Thursday night game in week number 16 in Los Angeles. Kind of a tough spot for the Broncos. But, Joe, in terms of catching Denver for that 3rd and final wild card position, Indianapolis is the closest, but they trail by 2 games, and these 2 teams will play at altitude, both fresh off the bye, week number 15. I give the edge to Denver there to expand their lead. I would say the team that actually has the best shot, if any can even catch somebody else in the wild card race, and they would need some help. Broncos would have to stumble down the stretch, and the schedule is not easy for Denver in their final 4 games. I think it's the Dolphins at 5-7, right? Miami, a costly loss on Thursday night, but that was in cold conditions. If the Dolphins can win their final, 4 or 5 games, probably need to win their final 5 now, as I see it, to get to double-digit wins, carving themselves a very large hole early in the year. But that's why the Broncos are greater than a $2 favorite. In fact, right now at minus 250 to make the postseason.
Yeah, and I'm wondering because I know the Miami has to play at Cleveland, I believe. They've got the Jets twice, but they've got a game at Cleveland. And here we go again, Ben, because that game is going to be end of the month. Here we go, cold weather again. And now this is a different Browns team with Jameis than it was. So, yes, they should be able to beat the Jets a couple of times. But Houston is very beatable for them indoors.
Yeah.
But those outdoor games, whew, they're going to be rough, real rough for Miami.
Yeah, they very well might be. The Dolphins back at home in sunny South Florida, at least we expect, son, as a 6.5-point favorite against the New York Jets on Sunday. I want to ask you a question about the AFC Championship odds and how it pertains to the AFC's number 1 overall seed. And then after the break, we'll get into the NFC playoff picture as well. Lock that into your brain. The Bills, for the first time this year, have moved in front of KC. Is it correct? Next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you. Pinching your own cheek? Because I was looking down and did not know we were getting...
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
For the first time in the 2024 NFL season, whether it was the offseason, preseason, and training camp, or now in the regular season through 13 weeks, the Buffalo Bills, not the Kansas City Chiefs, are the favorites to win the AFC. At a 2-1 price for the Bills, 50 cents back for Kansas City at plus 250. But, Joe, as you look at the AFC playoff picture, the Chiefs still in that number 1 overall spot. And although KC has won 9 of their 11 games by just a single score, and at times it seems as though luck is blessing Kansas City more so than skill. The Chiefs are still the minus money favorites at minus 135 to be that number 1 overall seed in the AFC. Is it fitting to see Buffalo as the conference title favorites, despite the fact the Chiefs are in the top spot and still the favorites to be that number 1 seed?
Well, I don't think there's any question that the Bills have shown they are the best team in the AFC. I don't even think it's remotely close. And I think what they're showing you is that they're more of a, well, let me not say best, but let me say this, Ben, the most complete team in the AFC, whether it comes to the offensive side of things with Josh Allen, whether it comes to the defensive side, which has been absolutely stand on its head good, or is it even special teams? I mean, their ability to be able to handle business so far this year in a calm manner. Usually we always get that stretch with the Bills that there's a 2 or 3 week period, Ben, in usually November or December where the Bills fall apart. And you're like, what in the hell is going on here, Buffalo? It doesn't look like we're getting that this year here, Ben, at all. And they have all the advantages now with the win over Kansas City. Kansas City looks like they're holding on by a thread. The Bills look like they're getting better and better every week, and that is scary to the rest of the AFC.
Kansas City is the first team in NFL history to win 9 of its first 12 games by a single score. The Chiefs were the first team in NFL history to win 8 of their first 11 games by just a single possession. KC is in the business of making history, trying to become the first 2-time reigning NFL Super Bowl champion to play even in a 3rd consecutive Super Bowl, let alone win a 3rd consecutive Lombardi Trophy. But here's the story for Buffalo as we well know it. Already wrapped up their 5th consecutive AFC East divisional crown. First team to win a division this year in the National Football League. And in the previous 4, Buffalo has been close. 3 of the last 4 years, the divisional round back in 2020, AFC title game against KC. But they have never won that conference crown. They have not played in a Super Bowl in this 4-year, now make it 5, consecutive stretch of winning the AFC East championship. Just some things to keep in mind. And the team that has been the bugaboo in the postseason is the Chiefs, who still, despite Buffalo having that direct head-to-head tiebreak, is, at least at the moment, favored to be that number 1 overall seed. Now let's get to the NFC. There's not all that much to figure out, except maybe some seed lines and then a couple of divisional races that are jumbled messes at the moment. Detroit's still that top team in the NFC, but Philadelphia is keeping pace, and maybe not just Philly. The 10-win Vikings, the 9-3 Packers, it's Green Bay and Detroit on Thursday night, but both teams get that full week off after playing on Thanksgiving. It's in the Motor City. It is going to be sensational. In terms of the wild card race, Joe, I would say in some form or fashion, those 3 teams are in. For the Buccaneers, the Cardinals, and I would also throw in the even 6-6 LA Rams. It's all about trying to catch the team that is currently in the top spot in their divisions. The Seahawks, 7-5, the only team with a winning record in the NFC West. The Falcons, also just an even 500, 6-6, and they have dropped 3 straight games. Atlanta's benefit right now is already a season sweep, winning both games against the Buccaneers so far this season.
Yeah, well, the NFC West is a hot mess right now. I mean, yes, Seattle is 7-5, great, but you've got the Rams, and you mentioned it, Arizona sitting at 6-6. Even the 49ers, though, at 5 wins, not that far behind. Even New Orleans, Ben, who is 2 games out of that 6 wins that Atlanta and Tampa have, even though Atlanta, I think, has got the tiebreaker there. There is so much still to be determined, even with Minnesota at 10 wins and Green Bay at 9. It's going to be a fight to the finish over the last month of the season here. So I think the NFC, a lot more murkier than the AFC. However, I think those 2 teams up at the top are clearly in a different category than the number 3 seed, 4 seed, and everybody else on that list. So I think the Lions and the Eagles are in a class all their own right now.
Yeah, Joe, I would have to agree, and the odds makers tend to agree as well. Detroit is the short favorite at plus 150, but the Birds only backed by $1 at plus 250 right now. You nearly have to triple the price of Philadelphia to get to Green Bay at 7-1 with that third best number. The Packers 9-3 this season. And maybe, although Detroit is the best team in the NFL with that best record matching Kansas City at this moment, but very different 11 wins. Detroit has been a cover machine, not on Thursday against Chicago. KC has been skating by. The Lions are still getting tested, though, in the NFC North. They have the Packers on Thursday. Detroit 3.5-point home favorite. They will finish the year against Minnesota. We'll see how that game looks at the time. The Vikings still keeping pace, though, at a 10-2 mark. Philadelphia is going to win the NFC East. It would seem they're a hefty favorite in the division right now, but still believe the Commanders are a playoff team. Speaking of those divisional races, Joe, the Seattle Seahawks, the favorites in the NFC West, plus 145, about 35 cents in front of Arizona. The Falcons are a minus money favorite at minus 140, but the test for the Buccaneers is, can you just outwin Atlanta down the stretch? The overall record must be better because they do not have the head-to-head tiebreak over the Dirty Birds right now.
Yeah, listen, Atlanta has just a unbelievable number, but I think they are minus 34 point differential. Like, how?
Yes.
How are you in first place? That's not feasible. That defense is a problem for Atlanta.
The Lions still a minus 185 favorite to be the 1 seed in the NFC. Around the NBA, up next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheeks as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
And welcome back in the early line here on the Sports Grid Network as we take a look at the NBA last night. It was a small slate, just 4 games. And boy, oh boy, a lot of second night of a back-to-back, including Miami and Boston last night, which kicked it all off. And both teams were missing significant players and availability because of that back-to-back. Miami did not have Jimmy Butler, who has now missed 5 of the first 19 games of the season with the knee injury. And the Celtics didn't have Holiday, didn't have Al Horford, and they didn't have Kristaps Porzingis. Did it matter? Absolutely not, as Miami, a lot of bricks last night, couldn't hit big shots. They did get out to an early lead, but that was all she wrote after that. 23% from 3, 36% from the field, and that was all she wrote as the Boston Celtics, coming off of that very rare loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers the night prior. Boy, they got even in a hurry. 8th win in 9 games, led by, of course, Jaylen Brown with 29 points. Tatum had 18 and 11 boards, and Peyton Pritchard had 25 off the bench. 108-89. It was never even close. Wasn't really that close with Atlanta either. Now, quietly, Trae Young and company, Atlanta's gotten very healthy, and nobody seems to be paying attention here, while the New Orleans Pelicans, well, they can't get healthy, and they got absolutely trashed again. Trae Young, 12 points, 15 assists, his 15th double-double of the season. Let me repeat, they're 11-11 as a team, and he has already got 15 double-doubles this year. The Pelicans, coming off a night in which they barely scored 85 points, they got a lot more offense because of C.J. McCollum, 29 points, one shy of his season high. DeJounte Murray also returns to Atlanta after being traded. He chipped in some points there, 7 points, 10 assists, but ultimately no defense whatsoever, not enough offense. The New Orleans Pelicans are in trouble here, folks, and I don't see it getting any better anytime soon. Now 4-18 on the year. You also had, well, the Bulls taking on the Brooklyn Nets, and if you want to talk about shorthanded, the Brooklyn Nets basically had nobody available to them except a bunch of G League players here. And Josh Giddey of the Bulls took full advantage there. 20 points, 13 boards, 11 assists. And just like that, the Bulls putting together a nice little run here. But the Brooklyn Nets had been great ATS team. I mean, a fantastic ATS team. But with the limited availability on the second of a back-to-back, not having any scoring punch whatsoever, they ended up getting trounced 128-102. And then, of course, as Ben alluded to earlier this hour with the Lakers and LeBron James, yeah, I kind of felt like they were going to be in trouble. They are barely beating Utah the night prior, going into a very PO'd, Ben, Minnesota arena. Guys calling each other out on the Timberwolves. And, boy, did they take it out on the Lakers a big-time way there last night. So a lot of questions about LeBron coming out of this game, and well-deserved, I think.
Yeah, absolutely so, Joe. It's the worst stretch of his NBA career since the very first year of his now 22-year NBA career. Way back in 03-04, his rookie campaign with Cleveland. 6 consecutive games with less than a 45% field goal percentage. He has missed 19 consecutive three-pointers. And for Minnesota, a team that played in the Western Conference Finals a season ago, expected to contend once again for the Western Conference crown. Off to a 9-10 start entering last night. It just felt like a Minnesota number. The Timberwolves favored by 7.5, and they made good on it. Because, Joe, Minnesota now been a favorite in 19 of 20 games this year, 10-10 straight up overall. But in those 19 games as a favorite, even with last night's cover against the Lakers, they are just 6-13 against the spread. It has been a disappointing season for the Timberwolves, and it's one that was rather intriguing because when Karl Anthony Towns was traded away late in the offseason to New York, the question was, okay, where does this elevate the Knicks? Can they contend with the Celtics in the Eastern Conference? So on and so forth. Very little did people ask about where it leaves Minnesota in the Western Conference for a team expected to contend for that conference championship out west. It's also another Tuesday night in the NBA Cup. We'll talk about that later on. Hour 2 up next on the Early Line.